Hi, and welcome to the first in a series of new podcasts with me, Lynne Franks, and Clive de Carle, talking about the things that we care about, of which there are many. We're calling this series A Certain Age, I guess referring to our certain age, but also the age we live in, which faces its challenges every which way you look. Clive's got lots of amazing solutions using natural health products for all sorts of things that you may or may not know about, and we will be covering those. We're also going to be looking about how we see the world right now and what's going on, and do we have all the answers? And we're going to be looking at things from the economy to agriculture, the food chain, mental health, especially in young people. We're going to be looking at things that we care about that affect our families and our communities, and hopefully what you care about too. So, how lovely it is today. We're sitting in the sunshine, both of us in our separate homes. And we're going to start this first one of a certain age. We've decided talking about the economy, a new kind of economy. I'm very into the whole area of barter and a caring economy and circular economy and the way we can do things in the community with volunteerism and so on. But Clive's been doing a lot more digging deep over the last few years, and he's going to talk about something called the Bradbury Pound. So, Clive, over to you.
Well, thank you. Um, Economists, I would say, generally don't understand where money comes from, how it's created. And in brief, the way I see it is that in the old days, carrying silver or gold or whatever the money was risky because somebody might knock you over the head and steal it. So people used to put it in the safest place. They'd give it to the king to look after or give it to a goldsmith to look after. And hopefully with their guards and their big safe, it would be safe. And they would be given a piece of paper, which was like an IOU. So that was very convenient. But what happened was the goldsmiths started lending out more money than they actually had because people didn't know how much gold was in their secret safe. And fractional reserve banking occurred at that point.
When
You
was
know,
that exactly, roughly?
well, the king, back whenever this was, a few hundred years ago, realized that although the goldsmiths were being criminal by lending more money than they actually had reserves of gold to pay with, if everybody came back and asked for all their money at once, they couldn't do it because they'd lent out money they didn't really have. They were just pretending to have it. So the king used this to borrow loads of money for wars. And when the goldsmiths were uncovered for what they were doing, the fraud, the king said, "All right, well, it's so useful for me. So long as that interest that you're earning on the extra money, you share it. You give some to the people, so you earn 3% if you put it in the bank or something. But they actually, you know, give the money out to somebody else at 10%, for instance." That became allowed, and that was called fractional reserve banking. When you've got a fraction of the reserve, but you can then issue, let's say, 10 times more than you've actually got. And this is how modern banks work. They don't have the gold in the bank account, just like they don't have your pension saved up. There's apparently 10 days of pension reserve because it's a Ponzi scheme. People are paying in and other people are getting paid out. But there's no big reserve of pension. People think, oh, if everything goes wrong, I've always got my pension to rely on. I wouldn't bank on that if I were you.
Hmm.
So um, in America in the 1900s, uh, an ounce of gold was worth about $30. And for 100 years, the price of an ounce of gold stayed absolutely stable because at that point, the American government had cut out the English bankers. Part of the reason for the revolution was the English bankers taxing Americans, and they printed their own money, greenbacks. So there's massive expansion at that point because the government printed the money and there was no interest to pay.
Hmm.
Back in 1913, there was a meeting in Jekyll Island where the big bankers basically conned the US president at that point to give back the privilege of printing money at interest to private banks. And so that's 1913, and it's been like that in America ever since. However, in England, in 1914, when there was a huge fear that World War One would break out, the big fear for governments and the Bank of England would be that knowing a war might break out, they wanted their gold back. Yeah, because you can bury the gold in the garden and you can look after it yourself rather than trust a bank in a war. So they were so worried there'd be a run on the bank that the government closed the banks down for a few days. They announced an extra long bank holiday. And during that time, they had to figure out what to do. And what they did was they decided that the government would print their own money. Now, they were already doing that with coin. The Royal Mint, there's no interest on coins. The only interest people pay is on money from the banks. So
Don't the
for
coins come
America,
from the bank? Don't the coins come from the
no, the
bank?
coins come from
From the
Royal
mint?
Mint,
Okay, all
which is a
right, fine.
government organization. There's no
Okay,
interest on that
that's amazing. I never
because
realized that.
yeah, that's the way with coins.
Yeah.
So um, the government have shut the banks. People want their gold back. And what the government did is they said, look, instead of creating money as debt, which money with interest is, it's money as debt, we'll create money as value. Now, what that means is what value does England have? Well, it's got the land, it's got the buildings, it's got the workers, it's got rivers. England is super wealthy, trillions and trillions and trillions, it's incredibly wealthy. So they borrowed money on that notion that England is rich enough, we can create whatever we need ourselves. There's no interest to pay, just like coins, and therefore people don't go into debt. Because the only reason people go into debt, apart from mismanagement of their business, is the fact they can't afford to pay the interest. So the interest is never printed by the banks. The only money that's printed is the money. The interest, the notional interest, is created out of nothing. And when you sign a mortgage, for instance, they ask you to sign it. They don't sign it back. That would be fraud because
Hmm.
they're creating money from nothing. You're
Can I ask you something actually at this point, which is if this was happening in England and America had their system, what about all the other countries in the world? I mean, presumably the African countries and anything with very valuable assets and minerals were being exploited by various European countries like the Congo, would be exploited by Belgium and so on. So was it very similar system throughout Europe, for example, or what was going on in
um,
China? I mean, it's a big subject. Don't expect you to have
well,
all the, even you, Clive, won't have all the answers to every question I have, but I'm just interested.
well, there were all sorts of schemes run over the years before Europe really became Europe. I mean, Italy, not that long ago, was whatever 100 prince states. It wasn't.
Right, right.
At that point, various cities tried different methods. There was one method tried I think, in Germany, where the idea was that um, you would get 100 tokens, which you'd buy with money to spend on stuff, and you had a year to spend them. If you didn't spend them, they would be devalued. I can't remember what the percentage was, but it was an encouragement to spend the money locally. These were local tickets, if you like, that you'd buy with Deutschmarks or whatever it was. And that system worked for a while, a bit like the Let's system and all the
Okay, that's good
various
to know.
alternative. There have been lots of goes at it,
Hmm.
but England in 1914 and America are the key examples, as far as I know. But so what happened in 1914, right? They believe there's going to be a run on the bank, and that could collapse the whole economy. The government would go down. So on after about 5 days, I think it was, they printed new banknotes. It's called the Bradbury pound because I think the head of the Treasury or something was called John Bradbury.
Yeah, I've read that.
He
Something you
signed
sent
it.
me. Yeah.
So on day one, the worry was if they released this new money, would the people accept it? They did. They accepted it. On the first day, they only had time to print the banknotes on one side.
Oh,
They're now valuable collector's items. By day two, they're printing them front and back. And if they'd carried on like America did all those years ago, we could have had a totally different economy to what we have now. But
hmm.
unfortunately, through pressure, whatever that might have been, the banks got the power to print money at interest again, and we became enslaved to the bankers once again. But the interesting thing is, because it's happened in America for almost 100 years,
Hmm.
in England for at least a couple of weeks or something, there's absolute proof that the government could print its own money without interest. It's been done before, and that would change everything. Because at the moment, every country is in deep debt, aren't they?
Hmm.
Don't know if you ever looked at the US debt clock. You can look up US debt clock online, and it's like 33 trillion. It's going up a million every second. And the point is that who is the interest payable to? It was never printed in the first place. So somebody has said, here's 10 quid, I want 11 quid back. But what right do they have to do that? when Jesus got upset in the marketplace, the only
He
time he
threw,
had
yeah, he
was
threw out
because the
all the
money
money
lenders,
lenders. Yeah,
users charging interest. And when you realize that actually, if you like, he was right, there's no need to do that. That's a criminal act. Um, we could do it again. The Bradbury
yeah.
pound could be reintroduced tomorrow, or enough time to print the thing, which wouldn't take long.
So we can print our own.
Yeah.
Well, I actually, I'm just looking at a quote that a very wonderful woman economist called Hazel Henderson. I don't know if you've ever come across her. She's a very dear friend of mine. And she was living in Florida, an English woman, and she wrote about a lot of stuff like this. And she talked about the current economy being a global casino, because at that point when she wrote that, it was just going into this whole digital sort of smoke and mirrors situation that we have now, where we have digital currency, which is, cryptocurrencies that's supposedly worth this much one day, and the different, and it affects all our economy really. And what you're talking about, and printing our own money, and why not? Has been tried a bit by these let systems, as you mentioned, and other community currencies. I have a friend, Diana Finch, who was CEO of the Bristol Pound, which was the biggest of the community currencies in this country. And she's just written a book, and I've done a podcast with her about why ultimately it didn't work, community money. But is there a way to get it back? That's what she's looking at. That's what we're all talking about.
Well,
We
it's at
women.
the national level. Yeah,
Yeah,
I loved the idea of the Bristol pound and so on, but it didn't work because there wasn't enough to buy and a good enough trading mechanism
correct. And
for
and also we
people.
have still have to pay our mortgage, our rent, and in the outside world where they don't take. But I've actually got some of those original Bristol pounds, thanks to Diana, which I'm now keeping collected as well. But I still think there has to be a way forward, and we're looking at an economy now that is actually globally controlled by very few people comparatively, especially if we're looking at the United States and the billionaires and the nonsense that's going on and the poverty that's going on around the world at the same time. And how can we level it out? How can we create some kind of balance to the very, very poor and the very few, very, very rich who own more money and land than even the majority of the people on this planet, which is just horrific. And one of the very many things that the human race decided to do in the last few hundred years, or maybe since Jesus threw the moneylenders out of the temple, who knows? But it's like, okay, where do we go now? What are the solutions? I mean, I think if we can talk about some of our ideas for solutions through this podcast, maybe that and the confirmation and the information rather that we've had with other people. I mean, you're in constant conversation with all sorts of interesting people who, all over the world, really, who have been trying out different ways of working together and earning money. And I too have been working with women specifically on how can we work in community? How can we work together? How can we exchange skills? We're in this kind of hybrid world right now on every level, whether it be economy, agriculture, education, where there's an awful lot of people, and interestingly, so many more who've come as a result of COVID because they were so appalled and disgusted by the ridiculous rules that were laid down globally in a matter of 24 hours and the vaccinations that so many people were forced to have and so many people that died unnecessarily, that has brought out this whole community, worldwide community of people that really do care about creating a different world. And clearly, an economy, a new kind of economy, is part of that. Yet we still live in a world where we have to pay rent, we have to pay for the mortgage, we have to buy food, we have to buy our children's shoes. So, it's like getting the balance right. So I also believe, and I think you believe the same way, that if we create the vision, we can make it real. Or it's a lot nearer to making it real than just giving up and saying it's all too much, it's never going to work, let's just give up on everything. It's like, okay, what could work? What feasibly could work, even in small ways, whether it be in the UK where we both live, or whether it could be in other countries. There's lots of interesting projects going on in little tiny places like Costa Rica or Philippines or Mexico's, small initiatives that are trying to grow their own vegetables, create the land, look after the kids as a community, the whole kibbutz concept, ironically, which worked so well for so many years. How can we do things a different way? If we could have a big piece of blank paper and we could create a new economy, what would it look like for you?
Well, for me, I would look at the top of the tree first. Two things rise to the top, the cream and the scum, right? And the cream should be running the place, but the scum are doing it currently. I mean, there's the idea of the Witten, the idea that you have 600 wise people who make the decisions. Now, Parliament is a perfect building for 600 wise people
It's
who
falling to
actually
pieces a bit,
care.
actually, Westminster. You wouldn't want to be there, really. But I get your point.
Well,
600 wise people could be working in Parliament, Westminster, but you wouldn't want to because it's really in a disgusting state. But anyway, yes, a building for 600 people outside, more circular building.
so, I mean, in my opinion, the vast majority of people in power, whether it's the CEOs of big businesses, big, massive corporations, or politicians, I believe that most of them, unfortunately, are psychopathic and uh, are not doing things for the good of the people. I mean, I can think of a few politicians who I respect, but very, very, very few, and they've got their own interests. Uh,
There are a few,
there are a
and I
few.
have to say that most of them are women who've gone in there because they cared, and have been a lot. There are also some women that I wouldn't say I would value their opinions. There's quite a lot as well, but of women that I don't reckon. But there are a lot, and even in the House of Lords. Although it was quite interesting, there was a big sort of event at the House of Lords last week where loads of people threw down bits of paper into the place where they all sit. I think there was about five people half asleep in there at the time, but that it was all about this should be used as a community, an assembly, a community assembly, or as a national assembly. And I think what you're talking about, 600 wise people of all ages coming together to make the decisions, very much as we used to have actually back hundreds and hundreds of years ago, men and women together in equal strength, who have different ways of looking at things, but can create something harmoniously that is best for all. And the elders being listened to instead of demeaned. And I mean, there's a lovely thing that you probably know about in America. I think it's still going actually. So a number of indigenous tribes have their women, the matriarchs of the tribe, choose the young braves who are going to be the young leaders, which I love that idea. It's happens in a number of tribes in North America of indigenous people. So yeah, there has to be a different way. I mean, we were talking about the economy, but we're really talking about what the future could look like with a series of councils, local and national assemblies. Is that what do you feel? Do you know much about the assemblies? I know we've talked about it a bit in the last few
Well,
weeks.
a local area should run itself. It shouldn't
Hmm.
be taxed by some higher authority. Uh, you know, simply, I mean, there's a hole in the road up the road. Now, I could go online, look for a tarmac repairer, and probably by tomorrow afternoon I could have the hole fixed. But at one point, part of the road was virtually collapsing because nobody had done anything about the hole in the road. I mean,
Have you heard all the news this week about potholes? Do you know that, or is that coincidence that you haven't?
I don't know. I don't watch the news or anything.
Well, it
So
was on the radio. Occasionally, you listen to the radio, but it was about the fact that the government's just announced that they're fixing all the potholes, and everybody's saying, "Well, what the hell's taking so long, and what's that really about, and where's that money coming from?" And there's a whole pothole dialogue going on right now. Interestingly enough, that you brought that up. But yes, oh my God.
the funniest thing is that if you paint a penis in white around the pothole, they come really quickly.
Or you put a few words like, let's get rid of the government, and then they'll come pretty quickly as well. It's
Maybe.
interesting times, and we have got local elections coming up. I mean, we have a political system, in my opinion, and it's not just ours, I mean, it's all over the world, that is coming to its end. It's system that no longer works, that we need something different, we need a new way of doing things. And it's about what I'm really interested in right now is kind of finding out, well, what does that look like? What could that look like? And how could we make it happen? There's that great quote by Buckminster Fuller that you've heard me say a million times, which I never get quite right, but it's basically you don't fight the existing reality. You create something else which is better and people will naturally gravitate to it. So I believe we've got that opportunity right now. There's a lot of people feeling like us. How do we create this natural, better way that people will flow into? Because they do care about the state of the land and the state of the world as it goes forward. For I mean, our generation, baby boomers, I don't know about you, and certainly how I felt always was that things would always get better. We'd always get bigger, more money, do well, and our children would even do better than us. And so it was, and the world would get better, and we'd learn more, and we'd be more creative, and anyway, that hasn't transpired. It seems that the baby boomers could well be the last generation that really did have it a bit easy, which is we're often getting blamed for doing. But the fact is that we've got a lot of experience out there, the elders, whatever, and we can use that experience and perhaps even some wisdom to help the next generations and the generation after that. That's I'm a huge believer in. And I think that's, again, very much the way of the grandmother. You've recently become a grandfather. So I guess you'd probably say the same. I mean, carry on. I'll shut up now. You can speak. Sorry.
Well, as you know, all the answers have already been answered. All the problems have got answers. Anybody from Vandana Shiva, who we've both been following, if you like, for decades.
Yeah.
Uh, there are answers to everything. Even the UN, some 20 odd years ago, said that 1 year's American military budget would stop poverty, no, would stop hunger worldwide.
They also said that if the girl child was educated to the same level as the boy child by 2025, we'd have world peace. So, and we haven't done that either. I mean, yeah, there's wisdom that comes out of the UN and other places. And what have
And
we learned as a human race?
well, I
Nothing.
think you keep using the word we.
Yeah, I'm a
Uh,
big we.
it's governments, not the we. We, the people, were told what to do by the media or whatever and did it. It's the governments who are the wrong uns, you might say, because, I mean, we've got I don't know how many millions of civil servants who don't know what the meaning of the word servant is.
Well, they're all getting the sack. As you haven't been listening to the news, that's also up this week. They're
Well,
getting
they're
rid
probably
of,
replacing it with AI and making more people unemployed.
yeah, that's I think what they're doing.
But the fact is that we've got millions of people who are supposed to work for our benefit who basically don't because they're working for the government, not for us. We've got a parliament that's perfectly fit for purpose. You might want to do a bit of smudging around the place before you went in there, but apart from that, it's a perfectly decent building. Um, we've got people who do actually care. The population, generally speaking, care, and even the ones who have felt that robbery, for instance, is the only way that they can cope. If the government wasn't making life so miserable for poor people, they probably wouldn't feel that I think, let's say your child is starving or, needs something really badly, various people might stoop to stealing.
Well,
But,
I hopefully not. I mean, that is not
but
something
no,
I'm
no, that's the
generally.
reality.
But
That
no, the reality is that they're going to food banks. The reality is that food banks have never been more in demand. The reality is that there is stuff going on in certain communities, rural and urban, where people are growing vegetables and letting people take them. Small, but it's starting. There is this alternative, much more holistic, loving, caring energy that's coming out. On the other hand, you've got right wing, you've got Farage, you've got the Reform Party and all that stuff. And a lot of, I have to say, with all great love and compassion, that you have a lot of white middle-aged men who feel very hard done by, who are going in, and it's not only this country, it's in every country. Look at Hungary, look at the States, where they're going into this place of where they see power, where it also involves a lot of misogyny, which is not very pleasant either. So you've got this caring community of mostly women, but not entirely, who are looking at a different way of doing things. And then you've got this very right wing, misogynistic, aggressive, anti women initiatives that's happening everywhere. Apparently, well, it's not apparently, it's true that Trump has just said that not only certain words taken out have got to be taken out of official documents which refer to diversity, but the word woman has to come out now. Can you believe it? The word woman is now coming out of American documentation. He's also getting rid of lots of American history through the books, like Mark Twain and other books are being taken out of libraries and schools. I mean,
me,
yeah. I
that's
have
insane.
somebody who was running a foundation, American, who's bringing over the books over here and keeping them safe in a university in London. I mean, I met the people. I mean, there's such insanity going on that we don't even hear about half of it. But the most important thing is that we don't put our energy into it, because if we put our energy into it, that makes it grow even more. But we need to be aware, and we can look at doing things a different way. And I hope, as we've been talking, or I've been talking, well, you've been talking too, as we've been talking on this first one of our little chats that we're putting online, I'd like to think that maybe we can start this this blue sky thinking. What could it look like? What could it be? You've already said 600 wise people going into a council, taking over Westminster, or somewhere, and local assemblies and local governments looking after themselves and filling their potholes and all the rest of it. There's a lot more that I know you believe in and have come across and can quote. And there's a lot more that I have. And, there's, I think what's important for me is that apart from being very close friends, you are a man and I am a woman. And I think right now we have to see how that balance of the masculine and the feminine can work together in creating this new world because, there's a lot of men out there who are very lost boys, I'd say. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
No, men haven't been able to fulfill their role. Again, I totally blame government for absolutely everything. What's the best thing about government? It's the 10 days at Christmas that they go on holiday. Bad stuff doesn't happen generally when they're not working. And I think if they weren't invited back and the civil servants were told, look, you serve us, not government. Let's say government never came back. Would things get better or worse? I think things would get a lot better. Don't think we need government. We certainly don't need politics because parties, we don't want a divisive society. We
no.
want an inclusive society.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We want the best for all. So maybe we'll talk further about the politics side when we next do one of these podcasts. But it's so there's a lot to do. And I think if anybody who watches this would like to join us on this conversation, even next time we speak about whatever it is, be it economy, health, politics, the new way, the new earth. So many people are calling it now the new earth, and there's also a lot of people calling it the new human. And according to a lot of the astrologers and prophets that I follow, this period of time right now, since the equinox in March, in between the two equate anyway, whatever it is, the full moon and all the rest of it, this is the most crucial time we as the human race have ever had in creating this new earth and new human. And it's the same time, it's the most um, divisive and quite painful in some ways, but we can do it. I believe we can do it. So that's what this is all about. It's creating our ideas on how we can create a new future, inviting other people in who've got ideas that they'd like to share through our various followers, I guess, and audiences. And let's just see where we go. So what do you think? I mean, how would you like to sort of sum up what we're going to be doing here and what we'd like to do and what we will
Well,
do?
if the Bradbury pound idea uh, resonated with you, there are loads of videos by Justin Walker about the Bradbury pound. I've interviewed Justin a few times about it and discussed it. Um, the Bradbury pound is an answer that almost nobody knows exists. And because it's proven it worked, it could be done again tomorrow. It's a question of the people realizing, oh, there is a solution. And there are so many other solutions we should talk about next time to other issues because every problem, in my opinion, has already been solved.
I think
Apart
that's
from how do you get rid of government
yeah.
and change it for something peaceful?
Yeah, well, government are just made up of people, and those people are basically get a lot of the ones I know went in for the right reasons. Some of them stayed for that reasons. Others have got kind of a bit pulled out into another space because that's the space they're working in. But yeah, it's all good. So let's keep this conversation going. And it's lovely to see you sitting in the sunshine. As soon as I get off here, I'm going to go and sit in the sunshine too. Aren't we lucky? So thank you, Clive. And yeah, let's see where it goes from here. Much
Yeah, thanks,
love.
Lynn. Looking forward to the next one.